Washington Post breaking the news last night that Manhattan District Attorney Cy Vance has convened a grand jury. It will hear a wide variety of cases, but most prominent among them is the decision whether to indict former President Trump, the Trump Organization, or other executives after 2 years of an expansive investigation. Joining us now, Frederick M. Lawrence, former prosecutor with the Southern District of New York and distinguished lecturer in law at Georgetown University Law Center. Welcome to the show. The first question, great to have you. What does the convening of a grand jury mean for the overall state of Cy Vance's investigation?
New York County, Manhattan, has got two kinds of grand juries. One of those grand juries is what people typically think of, the ones where evidence is put in for burglaries, robberies, attempted murder, murder cases, the kinds of cases the DA brings. Then there's a different kind called investigatory grand juries. That's what this is. Investigatory grand jury allows the prosecutor to issue subpoenas, to get witnesses, to get documents, and it allows them to put together very complicated cases. So it does feel like this case has been going on for a long time, but that's because it's a complicated case. It probably involves thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of pages of documents, tax returns, financial documents. So what does it mean now that they've convened a grand jury? It means we've taken the next step up. It almost certainly means that the DA thinks that they've got actual evidence of a crime someplace in the Trump Organization, possibly the former president himself, and they're taking this next step up.
So, Frederick, to that point, what does a timeline for a grand jury normally look like? What can we expect here?
It's not going to be quick. This grand jury will sit for 6 months. It meets several times a week. It could be extended. The prosecutors have the authority to go to a judge and get it extended. So no one should be waiting by a phone to hear about an indictment tomorrow. This is an ongoing process. But I think, as I say, it's step by step. In all likelihood, they've been working with the grand jury before this because there have been subpoenas. They have been getting documents. So what happened now? It's very possible that they wanted this information now to be known, that this has now reached a level that it's much more serious. It could also be that if there are people out there with evidence who might want to be cooperating witnesses, this is the time. That boat is going to be leaving the shore pretty soon. You want to be on it if you're somebody who's possibly implicated.
Frederick, I don't have to tell you, Vance has brought in some top prosecutors for this. We're talking about Mark Pomeranz on the partnership with Letitia James's office. What can we glean from that?
Mark Pomeranz was an assistant U.S. attorney during the days when I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York. He was known as one of the stars of the office. He is very experienced with high-profile cases, with complicated cases, with cases that require incredible attention to detail. The fact that the DA brought them in means, to me, two things. It means they know it's a complicated case, but it also means that they want to put all the resources into it that are needed. So I think what you're seeing is a case play out that is being put together carefully, meticulously, because it's so high profile. They do not want to move without being sure they've got all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. I think that's why they brought Pomeranz in, to make sure that that happens.
Is it more likely that the former President Trump himself would be indicted, or maybe an associate or the organization as a whole could get indicted as they move forward?
This is the question everybody's asking. And the real question will be, back at the time of Watergate, they said, what did the president know and when did he know it? You're going to be hearing that again now. What did the former president know and when did he know it? The Trump Organization is famously Byzantine and complicated. They have lots of ways of keeping Trump himself clear of certain kinds of decisions. So it may not be that easy to actually prove that it's about Trump himself. That's one of the reasons that you've heard a lot of attention being given to Alan Weisselberg, who was the chief financial officer of the Trump Organization. There's been a lot of pressure brought to try to get him to cooperate because he would know what Trump's actual involvement was. So there may not be documents with Trump's signature on them. That may have to be done through testimony of witnesses, and the chief financial officer would be the key person to do that.
As a former federal prosecutor yourself, Frederick, what will you keep an eye on as this probe moves forward?
First thing you're going to look for is, are there people who are taking guilty pleas? Because if they're taking guilty pleas, that means they're cooperating. So as soon as you see that start to happen, you will know that there are people turning state's evidence to protect the prosecution. The other is just to watch the process continue to unfold. I mean, look at the last two major steps we've seen publicly. One is that New York State Attorney General announced that she was moving this from a that was criminal. That means it's gone to evidence of intent to commit crime. So that's a big move. The grand jury is a big move. Watch for future announcements that will come out. But the last thing I'll just mention, the fact that you don't hear anything doesn't mean there aren't things happening. This will continue to happen behind the scenes, and you will see press, maybe you folks yourselves, will be standing there watching to see who's going to be testifying before that grand jury. It's a secret grand jury, as they all are, but they got to walk in and they got to walk out.
Well, it's such a pleasure to get your insight, Frederick. We hope you come back, because we know we'll be discussing this a lot more in the upcoming months. Frederick M. Lawrence, former prosecutor with the Southern District of New York and distinguished lecturer in law at Georgetown University Law Center.